Hello and welcome back to our inventory system series. In this episode we're going to start work on our container inventory. These are inventories around the world which have their own inventory components that we can then take a look at and take items from. So let's get started. So to get started with the container system here, we're going to first of all create our container object. So for this I'm going to use Quicksort Bridge actually. So I'm going to go up here and use Quicksort Bridge. And this will open up for me. Hopefully I'm already logged in. We are. And I'm logged in. So I've already got something downloaded here I can use. So I'm going to go down here and use this chest on here and add it to my project. And there we are. So let's close Quicksort Bridge now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new actor. And give me class, choose actor. And we'll call this one my chest. And in there we're going to have the mesh for it. Is pretty straightforward. Open. Here we are. So that's going to be a static mesh on here. And we'll select this and just drag in my mesh. There. Okay. And we'll make that rotate around so it's facing the x-axis. There we are. Okay, so to make this work, the beauty of the inventory component is that we can just add it onto here. Now this chest will have inventory. So I'll do inventory component system, and there you go. And I can define it and give it some items over here if I wanted to preload it with items for the player to find. Just going to change the inventory size here to say maybe 8, but obviously you can do whatever you wish. So the way this is going to work is that it's going to call a function to open and show a new container window. And this window is unique in that it's going to show 2 inventory grids. It's going to show the player's one and the chest's one. So you can easily drag and drop in between the player inventory and the chest inventory. So let's take a look at creating our UI for this. I'm going to go down here, go to our UI, create a new user widget, and we're going to call it container inventory. And I'm going to open this up here. And now in here we're going to have a canvas panel to store both of these grids on there. And in this canvas panel here we're going to have an inventory grid, both one for the player and one for the container. Let's drag that into our scene here. The player's one. You can size it, scale it however you want. I'm going to anchor this one to the left hand side of the screen and just change the position here to maybe 100 offset. Yeah, and I just like to round these numbers up, so let's do 950 in size there, and let's do 550 for height. Okay, and I'm going to do another inventory grid. This one is going to be on the right hand side, and this will be for the chest container. So over here we're going to go into its size there. Actually, let's just resize it here manually for now. Get that how we want it. So I'm thinking it's still 550 in its height. That's the same as the player one, but the size and its width I think it's going to change a bit here. Let's change that to maybe 500 with an offset again on the right hand side here of y, not y, sorry, x be minus 100, and that tucks it in just there. So the left hand one will be our player one, and we're going to denote that by just changing up here the name of it. So we'll do player inventory grid, and this one will be the container inventory grid. File and save that. Okay, so to actually display the contents of this, we're going to go over to the graph, and we're going to go to the pre-construct. And in the pre-construct, we're going to call our player character's inventory component. So we can do get player character, get component by class, and we're going to just pick from that drop down here the inventory component system. And we're going to tell our display, our inventory grid here to display our inventory system here. So let's take our inventory grid out for the player, for that display inventory function we made prior, and put that into here like so. And the inventory component is obviously going to be the player's one got from here. Okay. Then we're going to do the container inventory, get that out, do display inventory, and to set this up with the container inventory, which is going to be a variable one here. So let's open this up and put in container inventory component. And this will be an inventory system component. But you want to make this one editable and exposed on spawn. So then when we show it on the screen, we're showing it with the correct inventory component that we've applied to it. So that will come in here, and we'll plug that into inventory components there. Cool. Compile and save this. Close that. And next we're going to go over to back to our chest. So there. And in here we're going to want this to use the interaction system that we made prior for our items. So we go to class settings, go to interfaces, and add the interaction interface. And on the bottom left here on the interfaces, you want to choose your interact with. Open this up to enable this to show the inventory. Okay, so when the player interacts with it, it will show it here. And all we're going to do in this is we're going to do get the player controller, and we're going to cast to our particular controller, cast to my player controller, and put there. Yeah, and we want to get hold of the head-up display here. So get the HUD. And we're going to make a function here called show container. At the moment we don't have one, so we have to develop that for ourselves. Let's go find our player HUD. Here it is. And in there we're going to go to the graph and create a new custom event called show container. Because we are showing it onto the player's HUD, that's why we have to put it on here. So we need to know which container we're showing. So that would be an input that we have to add to our event. So go to inputs and choose inventory system as our input there. Give it the container inventory as its name. Okay, next we're going to create now that widget we just made. So create widget and create the container widget. And inventory, and here you see it's asking for that container inventory component, and that's going to come from our blue pin over here on the show container. I'm going to feed that directly into that there, and we're going to just promote that to a variable whilst we're here, and do container menu. And actually, sorry, not container menu, we've already done this. We want to use this menu one we already set up here. This is why we changed this menu here to a user widget rather than just the standard player inventory widget. If we drag that here, we should be able to set it to our return value there. Okay, if you don't, change the menu type here to user widget. And then we're going to add that to viewport. So, compile and save that. So go back to my chest now. I should be able to call that show container function come up there. And obviously we need the container inventory. Pretty simple. It's just that from our component list. I'll save. So let's put that into our scene here. Inventory, chest, drag that in, hit play. This one, and let's take a look at this. And I've got no collision on it. So this is the thing you have with Quicksort Bridge sometimes, although a lot of the time they don't come with any collision on them. So we're going to go and edit our chest's collision settings on their mesh. We're going to the mesh here, and just going to go collision, add box collision. There you go. You should see that green box appear around it. Hit save and go back to that now. Now should be able to Okay. Oh, apologies, I forgot one more thing. State mesh here, we need to change its collision faces here to block interactive ones. What is an interactive? Oh, there we go. And then because it doesn't have an item to add, the default behavior of the inventory component is going to try and add it to the inventory, which obviously it can't do that. So we need to go in and edit that to allow it to show this and use its own interact with. So you're going to go into your inventory system, go to the graph and look for your input and interact. And here we have the server interact going on here. It's looking for the item data. So it doesn't have an item data because it's a container. So on the is not valid here is where we're going to have our next bit of code. But before we put in the extra code here, there's one thing we do need to do, and that is make it so the chest becomes a new ownership over to the player who's interacting with it. Because whenever something's spawned in by the server, in which case pretty much everything here is, the server will own it. Meaning there's some issues it's going to cause when we interact with it and we don't have access to its stuff. We want the player to be able to interact and change things on it freely, and they can only do that if they're the owner. So we need to change the ownership of that to what we got here. So let's take our target here from the interaction system, and from there going to drag out and do set owner. Plug that in. It is not valid of our validation check, and the new owner is going to be the player controller of who owns its inventory system. So we're going to get owner here. Let's can get confusing, sorry, because this owner is different from the other owner. This refers to the ownership of the component, so which actor owns this component, whereas this is the actor's owner, which is which player controller owns it. So we're going to get the owner of this, cast to our first person character, and I'm just going to make this a pure cast, just to make things a bit tidier. And then from here I'm going to do get controller, and that's going to be my new owner of it there. So now the chest belongs to whoever is opening it. This is when you usually have issues in games, with multiplayer games. You may see a message come up saying so and so is interacting with this item, okay, so you can't do it as well. This is where that problem comes in. So that solves it. Okay, and then I need to tell this particular chest to interact with, but only on the owning client. I don't want other people to have the same menu pop up or anything like that, but only the owning client should be able to see the content. So we're going to create a new custom event in here to handle that. We'll do custom event called on local interact, and this is going to be replicated to be on owning client only. And this will need a couple of things. First of all, who we're interacting with, so target actor, and that'd be an actor class reference, or act object reference, sorry. And we're going to need also the interactor who is interacting with it. Again, we'll leave it as actor, that'll be fine. And then this will just take out this target actor and do the normal interact with message that we normally use for interfaces. And the player character will go into here. This would be the player character, so I need to have this set to cast to BP first person character. Okay, so that's coming through just there, just fine. But then I just need to call this over here on the set owner. So we just do on local interact, and all that fresh that because get a weird issue there. There you go. Clear that error, and then the target actor for this will be this one we got from here. So just there, and interactor will be the player character coming from here. Okay. File and save this. So long story short, what is happening here is when we interact with it, we're going to check to see whether it's an item or not. It's not an item, in this case it's not. We're then going to tell it to just know the normal interaction with its on itself. But in this case, we only want it to show on the owner's side. So change the ownership to the chest to the person who's opening it, and then make it so they can see the contents of it. So let's see that in action. Go back to this menu here, push E, and there's my menu now. Okay. Now it still doesn't disappear. We have to put that on there now, but we've got the menu there just fine. So all we need to do now is make that menu disappear when we want to close it. So let's go over to our container UI, which is here, and go to the graph. And all I'm going to do in here is on the event construct is I'm going to get the player controller. Basically the same what we did on our player inventory really. We get a player controller here, set input mode to UI only. This, and the widget to focus will be the let's do container inventory grid in there, and we're then going to do set show mouse cursor and plug that in, turn it on, and then when this gets destruct, we're going to go and do player controller again. Going to do an is valid check on it to avoid that weird error we get when we close out the game. Let's solve that for us. And if it's valid, we're going to set input mode to game only. And I'm going to hide that cursor again. So set show mouse cursor, leave that as false. Okay, and then it's just the key down event that we need to make. So just go over to our functions, override key down, and on the key event we're going to do get key, get which key we're looking for, and we're going to compare that to by using equals to, and we're going to put in the two different things we can put in here. I'm going to put in the E key, so if I interact with it again it'll do that, and also I want to do it for the gamepad as well. So I'm going to do equals again, and this will be for the gamepad pushing the B button. B button? No, yeah, we'll do the B button, and or again another one is equal to the basically the start button on a controller. So either one will be fine. But any of these keys can trigger this to happen. So I'm going to do an OR boolean, and I'm going to add an extra pin to it so I can do all three, and go into a branch. This, and all we do then is just do remove from parent, and not forgetting to say we've handled the input by using the handled expression. Okay, let's see that now in action. Play on my server view, open it up, is okay, and if I push up, I forgot to give it focus. Here's pen inventory. So if you don't have focus, key down doesn't work. So go to the root of your UI and turn on is focusable. File save. Now we should get better result. There you go. Okay. And there we have it. We've now created our first inventory for our containers and displayed their widgets on the screen, allowing us to see their contents. In the next episode, we're going to go through the process of how to drag and drop items from one inventory to another, taking items from our chests and adding them to our player inventories through the power from drag and drops. If you want to watch that next episode right now, head over to patreon.com/Ryan Laley, where you can find all my videos early before everyone else. Thank you to all my patrons and YouTube supporters for their continued support. If you're watching this and you're not yet subscribed, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Bye everyone.